Welcome back to Paper Things. Today we'll be reading chapters 6 through 10. Chapter 6, Books. Briggs is assistant manager at the One Stop Party Shop, and his apartment is decorated with alligator party lights, smiley face rugs, and dinosaur piñatas. It's a one-of-a-kind Coolio place, so staying at Briggs' apartment isn't that bad. That is, if you ignore the fact that it's on the opposite side of town from Eastland Elementary, has the grimiest, hairiest bathtub on the planet, and is a studio apartment, which means everything is crammed together in one tiny room, so I have to sleep on the floor. Briggs has a matching love seat and chair. Both fold out into beds, which is très cool, but Briggs and Gage, who are longer than me, get them. I get the seat cushions they toss off when unfolding their beds. Here is an ode to the seat cushions that I wrote in language arts last week. Ode to seat cushions. Oh, seat cushions, so quiet, so still, so nearly invisible. Mindless occupants hurl themselves down on you, unnoticing. The support you try to offer, the comfort you give, your reliability. But in my hands, you are no longer reduced to ignored decor. You move from furniture to floor, and aligned triplets elongate, turning lack into luxury. You become my bed, shielding me from the foot-worn rug encrusted with Cheerios, toenail clippings, and unvacuumed dead skin. On you, I sink, I surrender, I sleep. I'm pretty proud of my ode. I had it revised. You are no longer reduced to ignored decor had been, you are no longer a mere part of furniture. I used some pretty decent vocab words, aligned, elongate, encrusted, and I knew that the boys especially would love the part about the rug being so gross. But when Mr. O asked for volunteers to share, I didn't read mine. I thought of Gage and knew he'd feel bad if I told everyone that I had to sleep on a floor. And besides, I didn't feel like answering any questions. Maybe I'll share it with Chloe, though, the next time we see her. I stay awake for a long time worrying about Chloe. I don't want her to hurt Gage the way Dominica did. Dominica, who said that Gage was too clingy. With all his heartbreaks, one father, one mother, and 3 girlfriends, it's amazing he still tries to love. After a considerable amount of time worrying about Chloe, I switched to worrying about Sasha. I'd forgotten to call her when we got to Briggs. I knew she wouldn't try calling me at Jana's, because she hates it when Jana answers the phone. Sasha thinks that Jana doesn't like her, but it isn't Sasha that Jana doesn't like, it's Sasha's mother. But I'm not as good at telling my friend the truth, so I'd never cleared this up. And as if all that worrying hadn't kept me awake long enough, I worry about my books, and even worse, my bibliography. What am I going to say to Mr. O tomorrow? Will he give me a big fat F? How am I ever going to get into Carter with bad grades? And how can I tell Sasha, with all of our big plans of going to Carter together, that I got an F? Holy moly. I guess I eventually worry myself to sleep, 'cause an early morning knock on the door wakes us up. It's Chloe standing in the hall outside Briggs' studio with my stack of library books. She's holding them like they're really heavy, and she brushes her red hair off her face like she's been out on a big journey, but she's wearing mascara and lip gloss, and I can tell, and I'm pretty sure that Gage can too, that she doesn't want to leave things the way they were last night. I would gush 1,000 words of appreciation, but instead I thanked her once and get out of the way quick so Gage and Chloe can make up. They go into the hall, supposedly so they won't wake Briggs, but I know it's mostly so they can have privacy. Okay by me. I help myself to Cheerios. "Who said you could eat those, runt?" Briggs says, crawling off his love seat bed. I know he's only kidding. Of all of Gage's friends, Briggs is the nicest. Next year, when Briggs's lease is up on the studio, we might try to find an apartment that all 3 of us can share. Then Briggs would get to live in a bigger place, and the rent would be cheaper for me and Gage. Louisa May Alcott? He asks, lifting one of the books Chloe brought me. Yeah, I say, glancing at the clock on his stove. It's a relief to have the books back, but I know that if I'm going to get to school on time, I still won't have an outline for Mr. O, and I can't risk being late again. One more tardy and I'll be assigned detention. You could choose from any famous American and you chose Alcott? She just wasn't an author, you know, I say. She was an abolitionist and fought for women's rights. I know. I was gifted too, remember? Briggs likes to remind me of this. According to Gage, Briggs got into a bunch of good colleges, but went to a nearby business school to save money. He's the first one in his family to go to college. Which reminds me to get the coins I've collected and drop them into the piggy bank Briggs gave me. It's from One Stop Party Shop and is pink with daisies all over it. After I tap the coins in, I shake it like I always do. It's getting heavy. When it fills up, Briggs and I will take it to the bank, where they have a coin machine that will count your coins and pay you back in dollar bills. Hey, he says after the shake, I brought you something. Gage and Chloe come back into the apartment just as Briggs reaches into his closet and pulls out a hat that's shaped like an upside-down ice cream cone. When you put it on, it looks like someone just turned a cone over on your head and the pink ice cream is running down your face. It's very funny, and we all laugh when he plunks it on my head. But it takes me a minute to realize why Briggs brought this hat home for me. We don't have Crazy Hat Day anymore, I say. What? Briggs and Gage say at the same time. But it's an April Fool's tradition, says Briggs. The 1st of April is coming right up. Yeah, Brigster, Gage says. Remember when you wore that octopus hat and Mr. O called you calamari all day? Briggs laughs. That name stuck for months. And remember how in 3rd grade you came to school with all your baseball caps piled up on your head? Every year after, some kid tried to beat the record by wearing more. Heck, they're probably up to 100 hats by now. That is, they would be if they could still do it. Mr. Chandler, our new principal, says that traditions like snowflakes and Crazy Hat Day get in the way of learning, I say. Snowflakes? Asks Chloe. The three of us explain that Eastland used to have all these cool traditions. At the sign of the first snowfall, the whole school would stop what they were doing and make paper snowflakes to hang throughout the hallways. In November, we'd hang homemade cards for the teachers, thanking them for all they do for us. Then at lunch, we'd have a big potluck feast that the parents made. And on April Fool's Day, kids wore crazy hats. But the best of all the traditions, the one that we won't be doing for the very first time in the history of Eastland Elementary, is the 5th grade campout in the library. Sasha and I had looked forward to this event for years. What could be cooler than sleeping over in the school with all of our friends and getting to see what the school is like at night, when it's dark and quiet and almost no one else is around? But one of the first things Mr. Chandler did when taking over earlier this year was cancel all school traditions. We have to stay on task, our principal says, which basically means if it isn't on a test, we can't do it any longer. Well, Briggs said, putting the hat back in the closet, it's a shame. This would have been one cool, crazy hat. It's 2nd period. I wrote up a rough sketch of an outline during homeroom, and now I'm in computer lab, wondering if I can create my bibliography on the laptop in front of me without Miss Finch noticing. Not an easy feat. Miss Finch is the type of teacher who notices everything. We're supposed to be exploring different sites that make word clouds. Visual representations can be powerful, Miss Finch says. I make eye contact so she thinks I'm following along. What words come to mind when I say community? Paper things, I think. But of course I don't say it. Instead, I open a blank document, pull one of my library books onto my lap, and begin typing the title and author, hoping the desk is doing a good job of blocking me. Daniel, whom I've been determined to ignore since he dove onto the seat beside me, thereby forcing Sasha to sit on the other side of the lab, reaches over and grabs the book from my lap. I want to yell at him, but I can't risk alerting Miss Finch, so I settle for a glare. I think he's just trying to get me to focus on my computer work, but instead he stretches over and starts typing on my laptop. I try to brush his hands away, but I see that he's at the Port City Library site and is searching for Louisa May Alcott. He clicks on the title of my book, copies the bibliography information, and pastes it into my document. And just like that, I have all the information I need for my bibliography, without hardly even typing. Daniel, Miss Finch asks. I freeze. Have we been caught? Group, common, society, Daniel says calmly. Very good, Miss Finch says, and moves on. I let out a breath. Across the room, I catch Sasha's gaze. She rolls her eyes as though Daniel was being a show-off. I smile at her, but secretly I'm grateful for Daniel. Doing my bibliography this way will save me a ton of time and is less likely to get me in trouble with Miss Finch, since I don't even have to take the rest of the books out of my bag. I know their titles and their authors, and that's all I need for looking them up on the library's website. As the rest of the kids are typing in words, how do you spell organization? I hear Linny ask Miss Finch. I look up the information for the next book. I'm careful to type only when everyone else is typing. I'm getting close to the end. All the information is in place, but I'll need to fix the spacing before I turn it in, when Daniel reaches over and brushes his hand across my keypad, minimizing my bibliography. Daniel, I snap, quit messing. Ari, says Miss Finch from behind me. Her wool pants brush against my arm. Have you pulled up the class results? Results, I say weakly, but Daniel jumps in. We pulled up the results together. See? He points to the word cloud on his screen. The word community is large and in the center. Around it are words in different sizes and colors hanging together like a floating mobile. Togetherness stands out in large, bold letters, almost as big as the word community. Miss Finch nods and moves on. I glance at Daniel. Thanks, I mutter, wondering why he's gone out of his way to help me, but too afraid of the answer to ask. Chapter 7. Hall Passes. Come with me to the lab, I say to Sasha. Please. That bibliography was due ages ago, said Linny. We're at the lunch table, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get my bibliography printed and in my hands before social studies. I ignore Linny and continue to wheedle Sasha. Please, I repeat, it's my only option. Without a pass? She's staring at me the same way her mother does anytime she thinks I'm luring Sasha into mischief. If we ask for a pass, the monitor will just say that Ms. Finch isn't there during lunch period, and that's the whole point. Sasha sighs. I have never asked her to break the rules before. Let's go, she says. Chandler will have your heads if you're caught, Linny says. I ignore her and wait for the monitor to walk over to one of the noisier tables. When he does, Sasha and I slip out of the lunchroom. Just act confident, I say to Sasha, like we have been asked to run an important errand. I'm pretty sure teachers aren't fooled that easily, Sasha says. But when we pass Mr. Granger, our fourth grade teacher, in front of the teacher's lounge, he says, "Hello, ladies," without stopping us, probably because we used to be his best behaved students. For a moment, I wish I were still a fourth grader. Mademoiselle Barbary does stop us, but I say, "Computer lab," in which she says in a strong, sure voice and nods, "Vite, vite." See, I say. Just go, Sasha says, nodding to the lab up ahead. Dim light behind the narrow window tells us the room is not being used, but Sasha stops cold when I open the door to go in. The computer lab with all the laptops and MP3 players is probably the worst place in the whole school to be caught without permission, and we both have a lot to lose. I risk never getting a leadership role. Sasha risks losing the points she's made by being patrol leader. We could both end up with detentions, which stay on your permanent record. So much for Carter Middle School then. I slowly open the door. I'm going back, Sasha says. Her face is splotchy red the way it always gets when she gets nervous. For a moment, I consider going back with her, but I'm so close to being able to hand something in to Mr. O. I nod okay and then slip into the lab. I wait for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. Then I slide over to the laptop smack in the middle of the row ahead of me. I'm pretty sure it's the one I used. I hope it hasn't been powered down. Ms. Finch is the only one with the passwords for signing on to the computers again. I tap the keypad and it wakes. I'm logged on, thank goodness, but I can't find my bibliography. I didn't get the chance to save it before Daniel minimized the window, but there are no open windows on my machine. My heart sinks. I click on the trash can. Maybe somebody deleted it? Is this what you're looking for, Ariana? It's Miss Finch, standing in the doorway with a sheet of paper in her hand. The light is dim, but I know she's not smiling. I think so, I say, guessing it's my bibliography. My hands are shaking. You know, she says, coming over and shutting the laptop, I wasn't born yesterday. A blank desktop tells me that a student has been perusing the internet, that she's been doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing. I wasn't on a restricted site. No, you were doing your homework for Mr. O'Neill during my class time. You felt his assignment merited your attention more than mine. When she says this, it sounds worse. Worse than goofing off, worse than looking at stuff we're not supposed to. It sounds like I don't think she matters. I must say I'm very disappointed in you, Ariana, she says before I can figure out what to say. Suddenly, I feel the urge to tell her everything about leaving Jana's and hopping from place to place, about leaving the books at Chloe's and struggling to find the time to do my homework, but I can't betray Gage. Besides, Mr. Chandler instituted a no excuses policy this year, and I don't want to break that rule too. So I just stay silent, wishing I actually were invisible. Get yourself back to the cafeteria now, she says, dismissing me, before someone catches you without a pass. I nod and hurry to the door before she sees my tears. Ever since we left Jana's, nothing has gone right. It's starting to feel like the year when Mama died, all over again. We have a substitute teacher in science class, which is almost like having a snow day. No one bothers to pay attention to do any real work. Lots of kids are talking, passing notes, even reading in class. The sub doesn't seem to care. She just draws a cell diagram on the board and explains what she's drawing, as if every single one of us found the structure of cells more interesting than juicy gossip. I put my head down on the desk. The wood feels cool on my cheek. Do you feel all right? The sub asks as she hands me a sheet of paper. I sit up again and shrug. I can't stop thinking about my next class, social studies. What am I going to tell Mr. O? Maybe I don't feel okay. Maybe I'm sick. Maybe I should head down to the nurse's office. I think of lying on the green cot, the white cotton blanket draped over me. In the nurse's office, there's nothing more to do than watch the hands on the clock tick around. Yes, I'm definitely getting sick. I gather my courage to say so, but just then the bell rings and kids swarm like bees out the door and into the hall. I let the crowd carry me all the way to social studies. Mr. O is standing at his desk. Mr. O'Neill, I whisper as I approach him. What can I even say? I'm not allowed to make excuses. But if I just tell him I don't have my assignment, again, he'll think it's because I didn't even try to get it done. Mr. O picks up a piece of paper and waves it at me. I'm very glad to see this on my desk today, Ariana. I look down. He's holding my bibliography. My bibliography with my name at the top and the spacing corrected. Now that you have your sources, let's see if you can't get the outline to me too, he says. I keep staring at my bibliography. Airy? Oh, I have my outline, I say, reaching into my backpack. It's not typed. Mr. O looks down at my outline and to my amazement nods in approval. Looks like an interesting paper, Ariana, especially this section on activism. Do you think I might see an introduction soon? Soon, I say. Promise? He asks, a little too loudly. Promise. How did this happen, I wonder? But I think I know. I recall the word cloud we made in computer lab. What were some of the most prominent words? Togetherness and help and support. I decide that I also add kindness. And another word which I'd type in 10 times to make it stand out bigger and bolder than the rest. Daniel. Chapter 8. Price Tags. So how is it being patrol leader? I ask Sasha when I meet up with her after school. What I don't say is, Miss Finch caught me in the computer lab and I think I might be in serious trouble, or Daniel turned in my bibliography and really saved my behind, but I think the only reason he did it is because he feels sorry for me. The best part is getting out of school early, she says. And the kinders, I prompt, smiling at the nickname. Yeah, they're okay, Sasha says, but she doesn't sound as excited as she did just yesterday. I wait for her to tell me what's changed, but she remains quiet. Oh, I almost forgot. I stop and pull 2 math sheets out of my backpack. I hand one to Sasha and slip the other one down between my paper things folder and my science journal. She moans, Fractions and decimals again? Want some help? Please, I don't get them, she says, especially their relationship. Why don't I spend the night tomorrow night and I can help you then, I suggest, hoping my voice sounds natural, casual. It's easier on Gage when I stay with Sasha. He can get into Lighthouse without West sneaking him in, and his friends don't seem to mind as much when it's just him crashing at their place. Maybe he and Chloe can even have a date night. She pauses. Or we could stay at Jana's. My stomach lurches. I thought you didn't like it at Jana's that much, I say, hoping this sounds like the logical reason for not inviting her over for months. She rents the best movies, Sasha says. 48-hour rule, I say, sighing with what I hope sounds like regret. I always used to hate this rule of Jana's, that she needed at least 48 hours notice before a guest came over, but now I'm grateful for it. Sasha sighs too, though hers sounds less regretful and more frustrated. I'll ask my mother if you can come over again tomorrow night. Great, I say, trying to ignore the emphasis. Call tonight after you ask, she says. Okay, I say, hoping she won't wonder why I'm calling on Gage's phone again. Even though I know that Sasha is a little bit resentful about having to ask her mother if I can stay over again, all I can think of at that moment is that extra twin bed in her room with the puffy comforter and clean, crisp sheets. Heaven. As I cross the road to Head Start, I see the airplane man from the soup kitchen sitting against a brick apartment building. He's got his arms wrapped around his dog, his chin resting on its head. The dog lifts its head and wags its tail as I come closer. If Jana, the queen of rules, as Gage likes to say, were with me, she'd pull me away and remind me never to speak to strangers. Rule number 72. But I've seen this man lots of times at the soup kitchen, so he's no longer a stranger to me. Besides, the dog is looking at me with its big brown eyes, and all I can think about is Leroy, our old terrier. May I pet him? My voice wobbles a little. I've never spoken to the airplane man before, not even to ask for a plane. Guess I felt that I should have outgrown them, the way I probably should have outgrown my paper things by now. He nods and I reach down and touch the soft brown fur between the dog's ears. The dog reaches its nose out and nudges the palm of my hand as if to say, more. What's his name, I ask. Her name's Amelia. Amelia smells funky, like Leroy used to when he went too long between baths, but I move my hand all the way down her back just the same. Poor girl hasn't eaten today, he says, rubbing his hand up and down his beard, like his chin itches. How come? Some days, food is just a little harder to come by. Amelia rolls over to show us her tummy. She's loving the pats. The soup kitchen doesn't allow dogs, right? I ask. He nods, looking at me more closely now, like he's trying to place me. Right, but even if they did, dogs need food that's made for a dog, he says, or eventually they get sick. Poor Amelia. I reach into my coat pocket and touch the coins I've collected today. They're more than just found money. They're my way of showing Gage that I can help. But then I look at Amelia's eyes and I swear my stomach does a flip-flop. Here, I say, holding out the 14 cents. I know it's not much, but if you keep looking, you might find enough to buy a can of dog food. A can of Alpo only costs 52 cents at Walmart. I know because I was cutting cans and boxes out of the mailer last week to tuck behind my paper cabinets. You seem to know a lot of things, he says. What's your name? Ari, short for Ariana. Thanks, Ari, but I can't take your money. Oh, it's okay, I say. I'll feel better if I know Amelia isn't hungry. You're a good kid, he says, and lets me drop the coins into his palm. Just then I hear my name called from across the street. It's Carol at Head Start, and she's holding the door open for me. I better go, I say, giving Amelia one last pat. Next time I see you, Ariana, he says, I'll have an airplane with your name on it. As I stand on the edge of the sidewalk waiting for a break in the traffic, I place my hand in my empty pocket. It's okay, I tell myself. I'll search for pennies for twice as long tomorrow. Do you know him? Carol asks as I pass through the door, but before I've had a chance to answer, she asks if I wouldn't mind putting up a bulletin board in the front hall. She explains that she'd like me to staple up yellow construction paper with a lime green wavy border all around the edges and purple letters that say, Welcome Spring. The board is high, so I have to stand on a small step stool to reach. It's actually kind of fun, and I feel like one of the teachers today instead of one of the kids. Carol goes back into the classroom and Fran pops out. What do you think of these? Fran says, carrying out some artwork the kids just finished. She's holding Pussy Willow pictures made from brown paint blown through a straw with little pieces of cotton balls glued on. Oh, I say, climbing down from the stool and touching one of the little fuzzy balls with my finger. And then my eyes sting with tears the way they do at the most ridiculous times. Think of spring sunshine. Think of petting Amelia. Think of anything but pussy willows. But it doesn't work. A tear rolls down my cheek. My mom made these with me, I explain to Fran, who is bending toward me, her eyes searching, trying to see into the secrets of me. But she doesn't hug me the way Carol would. Maybe you would like to come inside and make a picture then, she says. That's okay, I say, sniffling and smiling to show that things really are okay. Do you want me to put these on the board? She nods, but start with the drier ones, she says, or else we'll have brown paint and glue drippings all over our yellow paper. I staple one of the Pussy Willow pictures on the board and wonder what Mama would say about all the lying I seem to be doing lately. 'Cause the truth is, she never made Pussy Willow pictures with me. Not ever. Jana did. Jana used to do all kinds of crafts with us. She would spread a plastic tablecloth on the dining room table and line up all the art supplies. Then she'd instruct us, like a teacher, on what to do first, what to do second. I was always happy sitting in my chair wearing one of her old shirts for a smock, following her instructions. Now, take a teaspoon of brown paint and place it on your blue paper near the center. Not that much, Gage. Less, less. I'd take my straw and gently blow the paint into a long, graceful stalk. Gage would blow too hard, causing the paint to run off the paper and onto the tablecloth. "Gage, stop it," Jana would shout. "Go grab a sponge and clean up your mess." "Why does everything always have to be your way?" he'd ask. "Because I'm the grown-up," Jana would say. "Well, when I'm older, I'm only going to do the stuff I want to do," Gage would invariably counter. "Not while you're living under my roof," Jana would say, and then Gage would stomp off, forgetting all about the sponge and leaving Jana to pick up his mess. After a while, Jana gave up craft time. Gage didn't want to come to the table, and I didn't want to do anything without Gage. I think about pussy willows. How little fuzzy pearls bloom from sturdy, straight sticks. How they burst open just when you've had way too much winter, promising spring. I look down at the artwork spread out on the floor. Some pictures look like pussy willows against a blue sky. Some look like poodles rolling in a mud puddle. "Here, Ari." It's Omar. He's standing in the hall next to Carol, holding up a newly painted pussy willow picture. "I made this one for you." It's messy. The paint is streaming in unexpected directions and the cotton balls are gloppy with glue. "I love it," I tell him, and I do. Chapter 9. Applications. "They want someone with experience," says Gage. He and Briggs are sitting on Briggs's love seat looking at Briggs's iPad. "Maybe they'll train," says Briggs, who is trying to be patient, but I can tell he's sick of Gage coming up with a reason for not applying to every job. I know, and Briggs knows, that it's not that Gage doesn't want to work. He works harder than anyone. And he really, really, really wants to get a job so we can get an apartment. It's just that he hates it when he asks and people tell him no. I look up from my math homework. "Who's hiring?" "Jiffy Lube," says Briggs. "It's a service station for cars." "They want someone with experience," says Gage. "How do you get experience?" I ask. "By working at a service station," says Gage. "How do you work at a service station?" "By having experience," says Gage. The circle game has become one of Gage and my favorite games. All of our longings are trapped in circles where there is no beginning and no end. "Hey," Briggs says, "it just occurred to me. My boss's brother owns a Jiffy Lube." Both Gage and I look at Briggs like he's just found a trap door. "Do you think it's this one? The one that's advertising?" Gage asks. "I don't know," says Briggs. "I could ask. No matter what, I could still tell him about you." "Couldn't hurt," says Gage, letting his eyes speak a world of thanks. We leave it at that and don't say anything more about a job tonight. Hopes are as delicate as butterfly wings. Say too much, want something too much, and they'll crumble. Instead, I tell Gage about staying at Sasha's tomorrow night, which makes him très happy. Then we both make phone calls, me to Sasha, Gage to Chloe. Suddenly, the evening feels a whole lot lighter. Briggs suggests we cook up some spaghetti and meatballs. Gage insists on a veggie, too. I open Briggs's freezer and choose green beans. "Did you know," I say after we've cleared our plates and Gage has started on the washing, that Louisa's first book, Flower Fables, was published by George Briggs? Maybe one of your relatives knew Louisa May Alcott. "Oh, yeah?" Briggs comes over and sits at the table with me. He takes my wrinkly paper things folder out from the stack of books. "Aren't you going to play with your paper dolls?" Briggs asks. "I can't," I say. "I need to write an introduction." Anyway, I know from experience that there isn't really enough room at Briggs's for me to spread out my whole paper world and not have it stepped on. He opens my paper things folder and pulls out one of my kids. "Who's this?" he asks. I tell him her name, but I keep my eyes on the book in front of me. It's my way of telling him I can't be distracted right now. "And who's this?" "That's Miles." "Wow, Miles has seen some Miles." I laugh. It's true. I've had Miles since the year Mama was dying. He's a thin scrap of paper, wrinkled and faded. "What's this?" Brig points to the sprinkler at Miles's feet. It's a sprinkler, I say with my "we're done now" voice. Wow, that's water spraying around. I couldn't tell. I thought it was just more creases in the paper. He rummages through the folder, and I'm afraid he's going to ask me about each item and each person in it. I yank the folder out of his hands and place it at the bottom of the pile of books. He's still clutching Miles, though. Give, I say, making a grab for him. But Briggs pulls his arm back playfully, and as quick as that, Miles tears in two. I can't believe I'm only holding half of him in my fingers. Miles was the first person I ever cut out of a catalog. I have played with him in our apartment on Crest Street, at Sasha's house, at Jana's, and every place we've stayed since. My eyes don't tear up. I don't say anything. I'm more invisible than invisible. I'm so sorry, Ari, Briggs says. I didn't mean to... He jumps up and opens the kitchen drawer and comes back with tape. Let's fix him, he says. I nod, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to make me feel better. Try as you might, there are some things you just can't mend. Chapter 10. Love Letters. I arrive at Sasha's around 3 the next day, right after her dance lesson. A visit to Sasha's house always begins with a snack at the kitchen table. Today, kiffles, which are these tray, yummy Hungarian cookies that Sasha's mom makes with apricot jam filling. Are you still working at Head Start? Sasha's mom, who I call Mariana, asks me. I nod, my mouth too full of kiffle for me to speak. Flaky crumbs float down to the diamond-patterned tablecloth below. I brush them away as discreetly as possible. Mariana blows on her tea. Did Jana get you that position to plump up your application to Carter? I take my time swallowing. How can I explain how I got it without telling them about West and letting on that Gage and I no longer live with Jana? That we no longer live anywhere, really. But Mariana doesn't even wait for an explanation. Have you submitted your application? No, not yet. But then I wonder, how will I apply to Carter if Gage and I don't have a permanent address? He'd promised me that it would only take us a week, maybe 2, tops, to find a place. But it's been nearly 2 months, with no end in sight. When is it due again? At the end of April, says Mariana, jumping up to look at the calendar on the wall. There's still plenty of time to add new activities to your application, she reassures me. Like patrol leader, says Sasha, or lunchroom monitor. I try my best to smile. Between missing so many homework deadlines and getting caught by Ms. Finch, I wonder if I'm even still in the running for a leadership role. I wonder, too, how you even get an application to Carter. Are they automatically sent to the homes of the top-ranking students, of which I'm still one, though just barely? Or do you have to contact Carter to get one? I take a sip of my water and try to appear nonchalant. I think I might have misplaced my application, but I'd rather not tell Jana if I don't have to. Do you know how I can get a new one? Mariana smiles and pushes the cookie plate toward me. Sure, you just have to request one. From Carter? I ask, taking another cookie from the plate. Mariana likes feeding me. Sasha can be a picky eater, but I'm not. No, Eastland Elementary has plenty. I had Sasha pick one up from the office. Sasha rolls her eyes. Okay, that's enough about Carter, Mom. I'm just answering Ari's questions, dear heart, Mariana replies. Speaking of questions, have you started in on the student ones yet, Ari? Sasha here has been dragging her feet for weeks. Student questions? I ask. Sasha groans while Mariana goes to a drawer in the other room and returns with a manila envelope. Inside are notes she's kept from Eastland Elementary, a copy of Sasha's report cards, a letter from Sasha's dance teacher. She shows me the application to Carter that she has begun to fill out. I glance down at the squares to be filled in, and my head fills with its own questions. What will I do if I don't have an address? Whose name should I write for name of parent or guardian? Should Gage fill out the parent questionnaire? Mariana turns to the 3rd or 4th page of the application and points to the heading, Student Questions. Mom's made me practice answering them over and over, says Sasha. She gets up and moves to the kitchen counter, pretending that the edge of the counter is a ballet bar. But I just don't feel like writing essays in my free time. I read. How would other people describe you? What is the greatest gift or talent you could bring to the Carter School community? Is there anything you would like us to know about you that hasn't been shown elsewhere in this application? You haven't started on these yet, Ari? I can tell that Mariana is just trying to be helpful, but her anxiety is making me anxious too. What if I've already waited too long to start filling out my application? I can't even manage to finish my introduction for Mr. O, and that's only a few paragraphs. Enough questions, Mom, Sasha says. But Mariana doesn't seem to hear her. Instead, she reaches for the hairbrush that's kept handy in a kitchen drawer and begins braiding my hair, an event as common as our afternoon snack. Sasha won't let her mother fuss over her, but I love it. Jana does realize how important it is to your mother that you attend Carter, doesn't she? Mariana says. I nod. Jana knew all too well just how badly Mama had wanted me to attend Carter. How many times had Jana tried to tell me to go easier on myself, that I should only push myself to get into Carter if it was something that I wanted for myself? And how many times had Gage blown up and said that my getting into Carter had been one of our mom's dying wishes, and how dare Jana try to interfere with that? Everyone in my family went to Carter. Mama, my dad, Gage, even Jana had gone. That's how she knew Mama. Back when they'd all gone, though, it hadn't been a school for the gifted. Gage didn't even have to apply. You were automatically accepted if your parents had attended Carter. Mama always said that the happiest times in her life were at Carter, except for having us, of course. And once it became a school for the gifted, she was even more adamant that I attend. The perfect place for my smart daughter, she'd called it. It was like as long as she could imagine me somewhere that she knew well, somewhere that had belonged to her, I'd be okay. Enough, Mom, Sasha cries. Come on, she says, pulling me out of the kitchen and down the hall to her room. When we get to Sasha's room, I start to take out my math folder with a surprise for Sasha. Your backpack is always as fat as a Thanksgiving turkey. What do you keep in there? Sasha says. Homework, for one thing, I say, finding the folded sheet of paper I was looking for. Let's do your math worksheet. Sasha flops onto her bed. Not now. Let's do it tomorrow. But I can't wait to show her what I've written. No, really, you'll like this, I say. I unfold a letter, climb onto the spare twin bed, and read it aloud in my sappiest, lovey-doveyest voice. Dearest Decimal, for too long, ma chérie, my heart's been shattered to pieces, sometimes in fourths, sometimes in thirds, sometimes in fifths, but always in pieces. In this I thought I was truly alone, but then you came along, dear Decimal. You, fragmented one, are my true math mate. Sasha looks at me like she can't figure out which planet I came from. I keep on reading. Together, with my solid little line and your petite point, we can express our sameness perfectly. I say 1/10, 1/10, and you say 0.1. I say 1/100, and you say 0.01. I say 1/1000, and you say 0.001. Look, I say, pointing to the numbers of my letter. Even though they can be read the same way, the fractions and the decimals, they look different. But you can see the pattern, right? Sasha just squints her eyes at me, so I go on reading. You and I have a complex relationship, But let me start with our most basic compatibility. We both express ourselves easily within a system of 10. As we move to the left of your decimal point, each place gets 10 times bigger, like my love for you. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. When we move to the right of your decimal point, each number gets 10 times smaller, like our decreasing misunderstandings. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And I can be a decimal fraction. A decimal fraction has a denominator, bottom number, that is 10, 100, 1,000. In other words, a power of 10. So, if you want to waltz as 0.4, 4 tenths, I will glide as 4 over 10. And if you rock as 0.372, I will roll as 372 over 1,000. What could be more divine? Forever yours, Fraction. P.S. I know that life is full of complications. There are improper fractions and the need to reduce from time to time, but we'll get through these new phases. I promise. I look up expecting to see a sky-wide smile on my best friend's face, but instead, she looks like Jana did whenever I accidentally walked into the kitchen with my shoes still on. When did you write that? She asks. This morning after breakfast. Instead of working on your own homework? Well, yeah, I wanted to. I thought it would be a fun way to help you understand. A fun way to show off, maybe, she says. She shakes her head like I'm the one who's having trouble getting things. Why do you have to do things so weirdly? She asks. Why can't you just sit down and show me how to convert a decimal into a fraction? I can, I say, slipping off my bed and moving next to her. I tuck the words show off and weird, which have the weight and sharpness of scissors, inside an invisible pocket where I can take them out and examine them when I'm all alone. You know, she says, I'm doing everything I can to get into Carter. What would help me the most is if you would keep trying too. I don't want to go off to middle school all by myself, Ari. That's when I realize that she is as nervous about next year as I am. I'll get in, Sash, I say. Trust me. One way or another, I'll do it. Later, as we dance together in front of the TV, I think about Sasha's concerns. What would it be like for her to get into Carter and for me to have to go to Wilson? It would probably be the end of us. No one from Carter really hangs out with anyone from Wilson. Besides, Sasha would probably make a bunch of new friends, even though I know she's scared that she wouldn't. Me, on the other hand, I don't like to think about what next year will be like for me if I don't get into Carter and Sasha does. Not only would it mean the end of the longest relationship in my life, except for with Gage, it would also be the last little part of Mama. Her dream for me. Just gone. Forever. But how am I going to keep my promise? Keep up, Sasha yells, swinging her arms like the dancer on the screen. I vow to work harder. But for now I have to focus on making things better with my best girl. Hey, Sash, I say when the music stops and we've collapsed on the floor. I have something else to show you. Not another letter, she says, following me back into her room and getting up on her bed. Nope. I go over to my backpack, take out my folder, and bring it to her. Remember these? Remember when we used to spend hours cutting these out? Part of me knows I should have outgrown this game, but that's why I haven't suggested playing them together since the beginning of 4th grade, but right now I just want to remind Sasha. I just want to make things right between us. Sasha carefully pulls one of my teenagers from the left-hand pocket. I remember her, she says. I remember how she used to go to dances and was on the field hockey team. Yeah, I say, look here. I open the pocket on the other side. I still have all the furniture, too, and then some. Sasha reaches in and pulls out my yellow flowered couch and refrigerator. I remember when you got this couch. I was so jealous. My couch was green and red plaid. It's hard to find whole couches. And here's Natalie's canopy bed, says Sasha. I always wanted a bed like that. Still do. Remember how you had all those twins? Yes. She falls back on her bed laughing. For some reason, Mariana got 2 of every Land's End catalog. Sasha loved cutting out duplicate kids for twins. Yeah, and then you gave me another catalog, and I had triplets too. It was so much fun, I say. Yeah, she says. She stands, and I think maybe she's going to dig around in her closet where she used to keep her shoebox of paper things. That she'll want to build our world again. Instead, she just sort of stretches and shakes her head. We were such dorks, she says. I place my paper things back inside the folder back inside my backpack. Yeah, I say. Dorks. That's the end of chapter 10. We'll be back next week for chapters 11 through 15.